friends. Welcome. And thanks for joining us on the Lead with Love, Love Wins podcast for conversations with changemakers. I'm Lauren Beller. In this series, co host Sherry Hodds and I chat with guests who are making changes in their world at work, at home, and in community. They're gaining self awareness, compassion, and courage to make a difference and are kindly sharing their wisdom, challenges, and experiences with us so we can all learn from their leadership. Thanks so much for being part of this journey. You can learn more about our work with leaders at changemakernation.com. Now let's begin. All right, welcome to our second Conversations with a Changemaker series. And today we are talking about grit and resilience and how that happens. And I've been actually thinking about this topic a lot lately. So first, Sherry, welcome. It's good to see you as always. And I'm curious when it comes to this topic, what comes to mind when we talk about the words grit and resilience? What comes to mind for you first?
It's funny because when I hear those words, I think I have different definitions in my head, different images that come up depending on each word. So grit, I feel like buckle down and head down and nose to the grindstone and like get it done.
Mhm.
And then resilience, and maybe this is because there's sort of been a renaissance of the word resilience lately. I don't know, but there's a real like coming from within, as opposed to like grit and to me gets action, get it done. And resilience is like the strength you have within you. And they're absolutely related. And this is just what's in my head, but that's what comes up when you say those two words. How about you?
And I agree with you, actually. They do have a little bit slightly different connotation. And I think about, for me, just this week, there was something that was challenging that happened with me. And my first instinct was to roll over, right? I was like, just give up and be done with that. And that's one option, right? And then, so I had a conversation with somebody. And I'm like, no, I'm going to like put on my grit armor, right? And just dive in and not roll over. And it's a choice. It's a choice to be gritty, right? Or not. But where does it come from? Like, where does the strength come from? And that's what I was asking myself this week. Like, and I know we're going to jump in to have a conversation with Melissa in a few minutes, because I have a sense that it all comes from different places, but really it comes from challenge, right? Mm-hmm. In my mind, my grit comes from the hard stuff and my willingness to keep walking through it.
Well, it's interesting because you said it's a choice, right? Mm-hmm. And when you said I chose to go in, it made me think of like, I'm going to armor up. I'm going to go into battle on this thing. I'm not going to roll over. I'm going to armor up and I'm going to go in. So there's something inside you where this is a conscious choice to grit. And did you find it different than saying I'm being resilient as an example?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the difference for you there with this one?
One is more of as you said, like an armored, like a conscious moving through with strong energy, versus resilience feels, it has a different connotation. However, they both to me are about capacity. Mm-hmm. There's a capacity that's needed. And how do we develop the capacity? And that's a whole nother conversations of how do we develop capacity for grit, and how do we stretch our capacity for grit and resilience and perseverance. Like, how do we do that? And part of it, I think we as women tend to go back to self-care so much of the time. The better we take care of ourselves, the more ability to be resilient and gritty. I love that word. We can be, I think there's even more. It's self-care. Sometimes it's not about the manis and petties in any way, shape, or form, right? It's so much more. To me, it's about the breathing. It's about acknowledging in the moment that I am okay and I am doing everything I can to be strong and centered and grounded. Yeah, it's a fascinating conversation.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. With both, you definitely need to have capacity. You have the capacity within you, and you can grow that capacity, right? And you've mentioned different ways you can do that. And it's really building your bandwidth to be able to choose to put your head down and get something done and go into battle, or to be able to. Resilience is almost like to me, almost like surfing. Like you're able to handle all the waves as they come in, and there's like a flow,
Mhm.
not ease, but I don't know. There's something like lighter about it. I could be completely wrong, but this is in my mind. I've got a surfer,
Mhm.
and it's being able to handle the waves as you come in, and you've got all this capacity. You've practiced. You've done all the things you need to do to have that bandwidth to deal with what comes
Mhm.
at you. Yeah, it's really fascinating. Having this
So
conversation.
you're going through something personally right now that, or as a country in Canada, that I am so glad right now we're not having to deal with. So in my mind, it takes a ton of grit and resilience. So here you are in lockdown again after so much time. And I don't know if we in California um, would have put up with that. But here you are doing it. And that takes grit, so much grit to like hunker down again. Here we are having to hunker down again. So to me, that takes so much grit and resilience as a people. What's your reaction to that?
It's really interesting. I can only speak, I mean, I know Canada, the situation is different across Canada, right? So in Nova Scotia, particularly, everyone keeps saying we're lucky, but really we've worked at it too. That's the reason why. So we were in lockdown a year ago and we're in lockdown again, but we had a lot of breathing room in the months in between. So schools have been open. For a long time. Everybody's been able to be outside. Everybody is willing to mask up because they want to keep that freedom that we've had. Now, not it's a little bit inevitable. We've been really careful, but of course people are going to come in from other places and that's going to happen. But immediately we have a lockdown again and people are willing to do it because they have that taste of freedom and they've built this capacity in the meantime we had some of those freedoms in order to be able to handle what comes at us now. Does that make sense?
It does. I just think it's also grit, and grit is an attitude, right?
Mhm.
For sure. It's an attitude. It's not a physical thing.
Yeah,
It's an attitude of how we tackle things or how we choose not to tackle things.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a whole other conversation in there about willingness to do the things you need to do to get through. And I mean, that could be something, there could be all kinds of different things in there as well, right? About what is a freedom really and what is considered an individual right and what is considered for the common good, what your willingness to do those things for yourself or for others, for the whole community, right?
Mhm.
So that's really interesting. But as a group here, for the most part, we've really been thinking about the common good. And so there's a real willingness to protect the group, to do what you need to do as an individual to protect the group.
I wish I could say that I'm seeing that here. I wish I could. I'm not seeing, I think there are so many people that would not have been okay with that. But anyway, here we are. And this is a fascinating conversation because part of what made me want to have this conversation is COVID and is the fact that people like Melissa, who is an independent bookstore owner in Idaho, in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, the Well-Read Moose. And you've owned it for how long, Melissa? Now is it 8, 9?
It'll be 7 years old at the end of May.
It feels older than that. 7
It
years.
does.
Still, it's a lot. 7 years. So talk to us about, because I have witnessed you in the past year plus be more resilient and more gritty than ever before in all of the 7 years combined, of all of you just tackled being a store owner in a global pandemic in Coeur d'Alene. And I'm going to let you talk about whatever you want to share about that. You choose. But if we all look around at our communities, we've seen companies close. We've seen our local favorite whatevers, whether they're restaurants or places we get our haircut or our dog's haircut or whatever it is. We've seen so many people, places shut down. We've seen people, so many businesses I know, many people, women entrepreneurs that I've worked with, just businesses tank. Not necessarily retail, but retail in particular has really struggled. And to get through this took a whole different level of grit and resilience. So talk to us about how you did this, who you became through it. We'll start with those two big questions.
Yeah, good morning, ladies. I really liked what Sherry had to say about the surfing, like the resilience. So I kind of see the grit as the immediate. And, when we were literally told, like, I think it was March 25th, the governor said everyone had to close like that day. Like in Washington, they were planning to close. They were in close mode, but they were given like a week. And we were literally given an afternoon to just say, we have to shut the doors. And it was surreal, to think, because we knew what was going on, obviously, in the community. But we weren't sure because Idaho is, very red. And there was a lot of resistance to closures and things. And so we kind of thought it would maybe be curbside, but you could still but we were like, everybody had to shut the doors and in an afternoon. And that was just crazy, trying to scramble. And what happens when UPS shows up and there's no one at the door, it's like, because books were in transit, things were moving along the normal course of business that then all of a sudden we can't do. And we weren't even supposed to show up at the store. So we had to turn away books and then hope they landed in a big bucket at UPS down the street and they'd bring them later. So that was scary. But and then telling your staff, we have to close. And I'd already had some staff that were nervous about coming. I was struggling. We'd reduced our hours a little bit because it was getting a little bit stressful anyway. But that immediacy is really kind of shocking. And it was more just, we've got to go home and work from home and try to figure out what to do. And we hadn't had a robust website business. We've sold things on the website, but it wasn't where our customers went. They were mostly in-store shoppers. So there was a lot of communication online with our customers, through our social media, and our web sales picked up significantly, nothing like the normal sales at all. I think for April, so we closed March 25th and we reopened to curbside in May. And then I think reduced people in June. So there was like a 2.5 month period of significantly reduced traffic. But we were able to, having a finance background, I'll say that helped me because I jumped on that PPP thing right away. Mm-hmm. And I kept paying my people. No one was working. So I just paid them their average hourly week. And then Derek and I on the operations side were still, trying to scramble and fill web orders. But I kind of counted on the PPP that I would get something and was fortunate to have a local bank. So, a lot of bookstores missed out round one because they were going with the large banks that were basically helping all their corporate clients. And that's what it is. But I was with a local bank that I had changed to in the last year from another local bank that got bought out. And I just wanted somebody more local. And I'd already collaborated with them on a couple of literacy fundraising things and school visits. So we kind of had similar values. And so I just jumped on that and was able to get the PPP money relatively quickly. I think it came in June. So I kind of was floating it along, counting on that. But that was huge because I was able to pay myself then because I had stopped paying myself so I could pay everybody else. And that was a huge relief. So that relieved a little bit of the financial concern. The biggest challenge with the retail component is, dealing with the customers and managing those expectations. And I would say that's probably was the hardest and where I had to take more deep breaths and just because I felt bad for my staff having to deal with people that were unhappy with us because we were requiring masks once we reopened. And so that whole dynamic was much harder than I ever would have anticipated.
Which is amazing to me. It's amazing to me that we as humans don't have the compassion for the people that are serving us.
Yeah.
It
was a huge, and I think part of it too is just, I was really grateful because we did get the PPP and I could see, we were in a state that wasn't going to stay locked down forever. So we felt collectively lucky. And I think so much of persevering through things is recognizing that other people, there's always somebody else out there that has more of a struggle. in whatever capacity in life. And this happened to be looking down the street at favorite restaurants that didn't have, could try to do some takeout. Some couldn't, they had a more fine dining experience that didn't convert easily. And so I feel like in the end, you just have to constantly look at the bigger picture and know that, yes, we're struggling, but there's bigger struggle. And to find the gratefulness in what we were able to accomplish. I thought about that a lot.
Yeah, I'm curious, Melissa, when you're thinking about this, like when you think about grit and resilience, how did that serve you as you went through this? Which one and how?
I think initially, the grit for sure, I wanted to take care of my people. I had this tremendous team. Many of them have been with me almost since the beginning and one shortly after, and most of them with the store at least 3 years, and they all really cared. And it's only at the time was 9 of us, and it doesn't seem like a whole lot of people, but those are 8 people and myself that I wanted to take care of because they had cared so much and poured so much of themselves into our store. And so, it was thinking about health and safety things. And so the grit was really, I want this store, but I want it to be a safe environment. And so I was going to do whatever it took to do that. I got a fancy Remy Halo filter thingy for the store air. We looked at all the different options. We spaced out the registers. We just planned to do things differently. We're still doing them differently. But I wanted them to feel like it was safe to come to work. And I didn't want anybody on our team to get COVID because they worked at the bookstore. That was a huge fear, but then a huge focus on what could I do? And you can't avoid all of that, but what can you do as a business owner to mitigate that, to the best of my ability? And I think we did that.
You were very fierce about how you went about that.
Mm-hmm.
That's the grit part, right? You can see, like, I'm protecting people.
Mm-hmm.
I am not going to fail these people.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Very important to me. And they were very appreciative of that because they knew that I had their back to the extent that I could control our environment.
Yeah. As a business owner, you took full responsibility for your people's health and safety.
Yeah. It's interesting. One of our values is to be a fun place to work, and I had to change it to fun and safe. I never thought about it before.
Wow.
And they're equally important now, but I'd never had a concern other than, we have 2 people close at night and, our parking lot seems safe. I mean, we thought about those kind of safety things, but not a health thing.
No.
We would, right? But we all had to reconfigure our lives, whether we're in a family or a business, to have that on top of mind.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Sherry.
So how have you been surfing since then, Melissa?
I feel like I've been able to think longer term. So once we were able to reopen, and it looked different and store traffic was still down a lot, but we were doing some web sales, and I just felt like we have the ability to ride it out. I really did. And we had a lot of customers that were, continuing to come and support us. And once I kind of felt that way, then I started to look down the road a little bit more at what other things we could improve. How could we get more web sales? How do we sell more gifts online? How do we get more school sales and events outside of the store? Because foot traffic is still down. And so how do you need to supplement those sales? And so we're still working on that, but that's my longer term vision. I don't think as a brick and mortar, you can rely just on the brick and mortar. And I've always known that, but this brought that more to the fore.
Mm-hmm.
So the surfing now, the resilience now is like, okay, we're kind of stable. Sales have been better than I expected so far this year. I think there've been some pent up demand, which is great. But and we're living in a community that was in the Wall Street Journal as like the best place to buy a house. Like, la, la, la. I mean, that's crazy because everybody's getting outpriced. And how do workers afford to live here anymore? It's going to become an even bigger concern over the next couple of years. And I need to raise pay significantly. And how am I going to afford to do that if I'm relying only on foot traffic in the store? So the resilience there is, I want to be a sustainable business, but there's always tons of work to do. And how do we get more sales outside of the store?
Yeah, innovation and creativity.
Yeah,
That's
all the time, all the time.
amazing.
I find it fascinating that when things are hard, you said it twice now, that you went to the bigger picture, or you started thinking longer term. So in the difficulty of it, rather than taking in the difficulty of the moment, you went bigger. You went to look at the bigger picture. Yeah, I would not have thought to say that out loud, only because in my head, I would have thought to hunker down, sort of what Sherry said, armor up and hunker down and, go get through it, trench through but you didn't do that.
Well,
You
we did
went
initially
bigger.
in
You did.
in the really immediate short term. But
Mhm.
as soon as I could see that we were able to, so we weren't closed for that long. I mean, it seemed like an eternity at the time. So the grit was in that shorter term period. But then, once we reopened, it's recognizing we're not going to have the foot traffic. What are we going to do about that?
Right.
We can't just sit there and wait for people to come. We have to be more creative. And we're doing some of that. It's not to the point. We started subscription services and that's been fun, and they're growing. It's slower than I'd like, but you have to plant the seeds, and then you need to communicate to your customers what you're doing and why.
Yeah.
So it's baby steps, but for some reason that gives me a lot of energy. I'm energized by trying to figure those things out. There's still bookstores around the country that are still closed or doing only appointments, or, I don't know how they're doing it. I think some have closed, and I think the ones that are making it have been around 20 or 30 years and just have tremendous loyalty, and people are buying online. And we're still little, I mean, age-wise. So, we're in elementary school now. We're out of toddling. So,
Thank goodness you weren't toddling during this. So
yeah, that would have been harder to be a toddler, and for a new business where you're barely established, it's just been super difficult.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
The other thing that this is the reason I love working with women entrepreneurs, is you said that the thing that that was most important for you was taking care of your people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love that. And it shows you how passionate you and we can be as women entrepreneurs, that it's not about the money. It was about the money and staying in business. Of course, the PPP was thank God for the PPP. And that was in place enough to keep people a safety net to keep you going, but that your focus was the people through it. So good.
And I can hear how you're energized now by what you're doing, Melissa. That's great. And that helps you build capacity. And what else have you been drawing on to help you through this?
I got a Peloton.
That's awesome.
So it took a while to get it. So I had the app right away, and I was doing yoga classes and stuff. And it's been a game changer. It's been great. I stopped going to my gym. They weren't very masky, even though in their name is health and fitness. So it just irked me beyond, like bleepity bleep irked. So, and I played tennis, and I'm not playing. And because I didn't trust that space. And so it's been great for me, the spinning, because I used to spin at the gym, and then so that was great. So I did take a financial, that was a huge add for me personally, to have something where I could do my meditation and yoga. And I'm not much of doing that by myself, and having that instructor component, even though mostly I don't do live classes, I do just the on-demand. It's so well done. Peloton's getting an ad right now. The quality of the instructors make you feel very connected. It's pretty incredible.
But it speaks to your self-care. It speaks to that through this hard chapter.
I had to find something.
I had to find something to take care of yourself as well.
Yeah.
Take care of your people, take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I've offered the app to my staff, that I would pay for the monthly app as like a health and wellness thing. And I've got 2 people out of my group doing it they have their own bike, and they're using the app, which is great. And, I'd rather pay for that. I'm not going to pay for a gym membership at that gym, but you want folks to feel like they have some mental health tools. I mean, it was hard on everyone, you know, worrying about their families and the false alarms we had with people thinking they might have been exposed and they have to stay home and get tested. And we went through all of that. And I've got 2 out right now. My 2 unvaccinated younger peeps are out sick and unsure if they have COVID right now. And that's where it's going right now, is young people.
Yeah.
So it's still there. But for me, it's just, you know, people love our store. And I guess when you feel so strongly that the community needs a bookstore, whether or not I agree politically with my community, it's important, bigger picture, to have that in place in Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah.
And so, as much as there were times when I thought, I'm tired of these people, they're not nice. I have to think longer term and think, I want that legacy in this community.
Yeah.
And I go beyond it's yes, it's the bookstore as a book lover myself. And it's so much more than that too. Like, you've created something really special in that community. That's a place where people, they feel belonging there. They feel they want to be part of what you created, which is really special.
I remember during the pandemic, at the beginning of it and the height of it, really, and before the holidays, really encouraging the community, anybody I could, to buy local and to be sure that we're supporting. But after hearing your story and listening to you over the course of the past year, it's not just about buying local is critical, and supporting our local community, our local store owners is so critical. But the kindness when we walk in, when they're requesting something, just feels like just as important. And the honoring of who they are to be serving the public on a regular basis, and the challenge of that for the past, whatever, almost 18 months. It's crazy.
Yeah. And we're all still wearing masks. And, you know, most of the stores I go in, the employees in town at these different places are wearing masks, and it's hard. You know, my staff, especially in the summer, it gets hot and we don't have the humidity, luckily, but it's challenging and tiring. And, you know, people, you know, I try to make eye contact and say hello to, you know, the gal that's cleaning the baskets at the supermarket, because that's not what they signed up for. No one signed up for that part of the gig.
No.
Right. We all have these new jobs.
Yeah.
And you don't have the same kind of rapport and dialogue with customers. You know, our favorite part of the bookstore is hand selling a book. You know, I'm going to show you guys one about resilience here in a minute, but you know, it truly is harder to be in retail and in any part of the service business.
Right.
And yet everybody's doing it. You know, they need the jobs and we need the services, but we need to be thankful that they're out there trying every day.
And realize that they're exposing themselves to hundreds of people a day, potentially, or thousands, depending on the situation. And if we can't see that, and that they're just protecting themselves and they need us to help them do that.
Right. Yeah.
What's the book you're going to show us?
So there's a book coming out in June about a woman who, I mean, resilience and grit, I can't even say. So it is a nonfiction book called The Woman They Could Not Silence by Kate Moore. She wrote a book called Radium Girls that was set in the early 1900s about the women that were painting the radium dials for the airplanes and for watches, and they had to lick to make their brushes fine, and their teeth fell out, and ultimately it led to some of the first workplace safety through the lawsuits of the survivors and or their families. It was tremendous. So this book is set in the 1860s, and it's about this woman, Elizabeth Packard, who was sent to an insane asylum because if you disagreed with your husband, that could happen. And there was no jury, it was just their word. And so she was ripped away from her 6 children and sent to this asylum. And in the process of that was, you know, the guy that ran it was manipulative. It was all horrible. But she took care of the other women there that were worse off than she was. She grabbed every little scrap of paper and documented what was going on. Eventually wrote 7 books, and eventually had laws passed. And this was set kind of in the Chicago area, but it went nationwide. And it's just the reminder that one person, one woman, you can change the world. It's tremendous. Highly recommend, because it is her resilience. I don't know that I could have done what she did. Getting sent away like overnight literally dragged onto a train because she didn't want to go. She wouldn't let them carry her. They made her drag her onto this train, take her away from her kids. And she overcame and made life better for people beyond her.
And Melissa, you sell this book online, I think.
Yes. It comes out June 22nd.
And where can people get the book if they want to buy it at a local bookstore? Online with you?
Online with me. They're pre-orders. All the bookstores around the country are putting it on pre-order. So your local store.
But they can buy it through Well Read Moose. They can buy it. So
We'll put the link in it, right,
yeah,
Lauren?
we'll put the link in it for sure.
Yeah.
So they
And
can,
part of the whole thing about buying local, it's also buying local online.
exactly.
It's so easy when you're shopping on the big A to just add one more thing to the cart, right? And so we have to continue to educate folks that, there is a web presence for most brick and mortar. You have to, and we need that support as well. It's easy when you're already online with one of the big box stores to just kind of add another thing to the cart, but we need that to not happen.
Yeah, that's people. When you think about indie bookstores, you think about the bricks and mortar, which is, but also online is just as easy.
Most of the larger, more established stores that were closed for significantly longer time than we were, the only way they made it was the online commitment from their customers.
It
Tremendous.
makes sense. I want to bring Jude and Michelle in because you are women leaders that I value your voices as well. And I'm curious what you have to say to add to the conversation in any way, shape, or form.
So I wrote down a couple of things as we were talking about grit and resilience, and I am landing in the same place as everyone else. Almost grit is the initiator that allows you to be resilient, is kind of how I think about it. And the hard stuff, dealing with the hard stuff, the grit, in order to get to resilience, I define that as knowing who I am and knowing what's important to me. And that was so relevant in Melissa's story because she knew who she was through the whole thing and what was important to her. Not just the employees who are like family, but your community as well. So that's, to me, the grit, why you get dirty, why you have that grit. To me is resistance, and it's figuring out how to deal with the resistance. And then resilience is almost a byproduct of having grit. That's how I see it.
That's so interesting, Jude, because that's absolutely right. Melissa was really clear on her values. And when you know what your values are and you know your values are under threat, you can get in there. And I like what you said about resilience. It's like once you've done it, once you've had the grit and you've done it, you've had the experience of it, you can do it again and again long term.
Very much.
Great.
Wow. Gosh, Melissa, amazing. Having known you for a little while now, like you had just started this business, I think, when I met you at one of Lauren's retreats.
Yeah.
So I can't believe, number one, it's been 7 years. Holy cow, right? Like, how'd that happen? The thing that is, so the grit and resilience conversation is interesting. And yes, I agree with everybody really that the grit part to me is when you dig in and you're like, you made a choice to do it, right? Like, may not be pretty, may not be pleasant, but somewhere along the way you decided you're gonna dig in and get through it. And then the resilience kind of, it's the flexibility, right? It's the you don't know what's coming, kind of like the waves. The surfing's a great metaphor, Sherry. I like that. Because it can come from behind, it can come from the side. You just really don't know. And if you are holding yourself tight and resisting, like that doesn't end well, right? You really have to be like, I don't know where it's coming from, but wherever is okay. Yeah. But the thing for me when you were talking, Melissa, and maybe it's because this has sort of been a theme for me this year, but at some point, first of all, I can't imagine what it would be like to have somebody say, hey, you need to shut down like let's chop 4 hours. I want you closed down, out of there, figure it out. You'll be fine, you know? But the thing that popped in my head when you were talking about that is that you had to have, and for all the people that had to deal with this, there had to be something in them that just really trusts life or the universe or whatever you call it. Otherwise, nobody would have been able to do anything, right? You have to trust that there's going to be a next, like there's a reason to, you know? So that, and then I linked that with your immediate look at the bigger picture and grateful for what we have. Like they sort of all tumbled out on top for me when you were talking. I was jotting those things down and I'm like, that, I guess those things are sort of my subtitles to grit and resilience, right? So anyway, that's what I jotted down, and it's just amazing. And I had not really thought about the experience of being told, like, you need to close down your business and sort this out in a matter of, like, I just had never, that wasn't my experience, right? So our business didn't happen that way. It was very different. We got you will stop flying today and you will stay home and see you in a year, maybe. Right. Like, so yeah, just amazing, Melissa. Yeah.
Yeah, that was just shocking.
I just, to even hear it.
But we also,
like,
you know, you have to look at it from, again, that bigger picture of we're in a pandemic. Our hospitals the numbers were bad. I mean, I have a Panhandle Health on my phone and I have a reminder every day at 4:30, check the numbers. And I'm still checking, even though it's better. Because it was, so that part wasn't shocking. It was the way that, you know, the governor just decided to do it so quickly, but it was the right thing. So you have to, again, like you were talking about, Sherry, and the whole notion that it's bigger than ourselves. It's bigger than us as individuals. It's bigger than us as families. It's bigger than us as businesses. This is not, you know, hopefully a once in a century thing. I'm not so sure anymore, but it was huge. And we're not in control of what's going on externally. So all we can do is control our piece. And so that's what we had to do.
Yeah. That, you know, when you just said that, resilience popped in my head, and it was the fact that we didn't have any frame of reference for this, right? We've never been through in our life. Nobody modeled how like there was no reaching for, oh, well, they did it this way. I mean, what was it, 1912 or something? Like, we just really didn't have that to go to. And I guess that links to resilience for me. Like, when having resilience allows you to deal with the completely unknown, no frame of reference, no landmark, right? You're lost in a dark wood and you got nothing. And so just I can get, I don't know how, you know, but I will sort it out. Yeah. Love that.
Back to what you said, Michelle, which is trust. You have to trust life. There's just
Trust yourself. Yeah. That. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting, this concept, and this what we've been through the past year and a plus is it's made us all, I believe, grittier people and more resilient people. It's also interesting to me. A lot of people say, well, I missed out on this, I missed out on that. And trust me, I did miss seeing my family. I still haven't seen my family yet, but I look forward to doing that. But I don't think we missed out. I think we experienced just something we didn't expect to experience and learned such different things. When people say, oh, kids missed a year of school, I'm like, yeah, but look what they learned. I mean, look what they learned, their own resilience. They learned their own grit. They learned their own we learned our own concept of how to handle something we've never experienced before. Yeah. And that is amazing.
Huge.
Yeah. capacity, that builds our resilience, just like that, having had the experience is just, I know I made it through that and I can do that again. That's is valuable.
Yeah, it is valuable. So I appreciate the conversation, all of you. Melissa, you're a rock star. I just am
Oh,
so
yeah.
impressed. And I think of you as like the icon for all local business owners all over the country, representing what they're dealing with still today. We're still wearing masks when we go into stores. So just a reminder to continue to be kind to our local store owners and wear our masks until we don't need to anymore, just because it's being kind, it's being compassionate. There's young people that still are not vaccinated yet. We're getting there. We're not quite there. I mean, my daughter's not vaccinated yet. She does not want to get COVID. And I'm sure she'd be fine, but she doesn't want to get COVID.
Right.
I get it. I get it. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you all for the conversation.
Okay.
And we'll be posting and tagging people and putting links to where we can get our books on Melissa's Well-Read Moose online site.
Okay. Wonderful. It was a great conversation. Thank you. And it was great to see everybody.
It was so good to see you. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Good
Take
meeting
care.
you guys.
Bye.
Take care.